you were feeling isolated. You had been through
Mhm.
a challenging time.
Yeah.
The second thing is you were out in the world in a support group kind of situation, which, that's a place where most people expect to feel safe, right?
Yeah. I was a prime target because I was really devastated and I needed some sort of support and connection. Those of us that are going through transition, like me, going through divorce, um, were prime targets. What if the best chapter of your life hasn't even begun yet? What lies within you is the power to live brighter, bolder, and truer than ever before. So, welcome to Vivatude, where caregiving, connections, and career come into balance, and where your vitality, vision, and voice shines through. Because the revolution isn't out there, it's already within you. Welcome to Vivatude.
Welcome to Vivatude. I'm Lauren Archer, and today we are talking about something that's becoming more and more common: online relationship and investment scams, sometimes referred to as pig butchering scams. Now, you may have heard stories about people being manipulated into sending money to someone they met online and thought they could trust. But what often gets overlooked is the emotional side of these experiences. Because the truth is, these scams don't just target money, they target human connection. And the people affected, they're not gullible, they're not unintelligent. They're usually thoughtful, caring people moving through major life changes like divorce, grief, caregiving, burnout, emotional isolation, or sometimes just longing to be seen and connected with again. Today's conversation is not about judgment, it's about understanding and learning how to protect yourself. My guest is Suzanne Newman. Suzanne is the founder and chief executive officer of Answers for Elders, Inc., and the founder president of SageCast, our parent company here at Vivatude. She is the host of the Answers for Elders radio, YouTube, and podcast network, and the founder of 12 Days of Goodness. Suzanne has courageously chosen to speak publicly about her experience. So, together, we are going to explore how emotional manipulation can happen slowly over time and why these connections can feel so real and what healing and rebuilding trust in yourself can look like afterwards. So, Suzanne, thank you so much for being here and for your willingness to share your story.
Oh, thank you, Lauren. Thank you so much. And, before I start, I want to tell our listeners here, this is a very, very difficult thing for me to talk about. It's embarrassing in many ways. It's humiliating. And yet there is, if I can help one person out there that is being manipulated, I truly want you to know that if you want to write me, if you're having questions with someone that you're talking to, I am available. As a matter of fact, we're going to put my phone number in the show notes for anybody that would like to call or text me and share their story, what they're dealing with. I care about this issue a lot. And the other thing is I'm really going to ask Lauren and we are going to hold a sacred space here. Because it's not something that I've ever talked about. Matter of fact, my circle of friends don't even know this happened. Um, and so I shared it with my Vivitude team only because this is the audience, the Vivitude audience, that sandwich generation woman and older is the prime target. But it's also happening to men from women. And so I'm just going to share my story. I'm going to share a little bit more about how I got pulled in. And, there might be some emotional moments, there might be some confusing moments, and questions that Lauren, you might have, or you think that I'm not getting across. Please let me know because I haven't even rehearsed this. I don't even know. But what I do know is that if we can save one person from being manipulated like I was, then this was worth the time. So thank you.
It's a very important topic, and I'm so glad that you set it up that way. Yeah, why don't we start out by explaining what is pig butchering?
Well, from what I have learned, Lauren, it originates in Southeast Asia, usually Cambodia, Laos, in that area, and basically it is a term that they use to quote fatten the pig, which means slowly to build trust. This is a long-term scam. Um, I happen to have a friendship with someone online for well over a month before anything happened. So this is something that is slowly built up, and we can talk a little bit about that and how that happened. And they call that fatten the pig. Feed that pig emotional support, all these things. And this is those of us that are going through transition, like me, going through divorce. Um, we're prime targets. The other thing that made me a prime target is my soft heart, my caring about people. They knew a lot about me because they were able to see me on YouTube in that case. So they really got to flatter me about. I did a really emotional interview with someone that was a wife of someone that had Alzheimer's, and they watched that one thing, and that was like a hook, right? And so the next step is called slaughter the pig. And slaughter the pig means that they start to push you about investing in crypto. And cryptocurrency is a unique thing, especially for people in my age group, because we don't know how crypto works. We've heard about it. We've heard that it's kind of out there and it's fascinating, but we really don't know what it is, right? And
Mhm.
for those of us that are trying to keep up with the times, we listen. I asked a million questions about crypto. And so, again, I was a prime, you know, totally prime for slaughter is the fact that I wanted to learn how it worked. And I was asking a lot of questions. And then the fine thing, third step is butcher the pig, which has to do with bleeding the pig dry. In other words, take them of everything they own. Now, luckily, I did not even get close to that. But I know of people who have. And
Mhm.
there's been stories in the media every once in a while of people that have been so emotionally caught up in these particular situations that they end up losing everything. And so this is something that's very real. It's growing rapidly. And the other thing that's really sad about it, there are compounds right now in Southeast Asia, in Cambodia, that people are trafficked. They're actually they appeal to people in other countries that speak English as in a work opportunity, and they end up being trafficked in Cambodia, and they're actually taken in these lockdown places that are like prisons, and they're forced to run scams. And if they don't hit their quota, they get beaten, they get whipped, they get tortured. And this is something that is just devastating to understand. And so obviously, there's another side to it, and the Cambodian government doesn't do anything about it because the number one source of tax revenue in Cambodia right now are these scams.
Yes, I understand. The U.S. government is actually working with the government of Thailand because a lot of the trafficking comes through other
Yeah.
countries. People are they're solicited for a job opportunity, and
Hmm.
then their passport is taken away, and they are passed through the border. It
Hmm.
doesn't excuse the behavior, but it does invite some compassion for the people who are on
Hmm.
the other side of this. But the bottom line is it's a very sophisticated scheme. And I believe we're going to put in the show notes the link to a documentary about this
Yes.
process. So if people want
Yes.
to know a little bit
Absolutely.
more,
And this
yeah.
documentary is put out by the BBC. It's on YouTube, but it's something if you feel like you have questions or anything, what this is, it is. I learned so much, and I did a ton of research on this. So again, I found this the most credible and certainly something for people to look at.
Yes. So you decided to speak publicly about this
I
because
did.
you want to help other people not fall for this. But what I want to go into the emotional piece of this. We're going to do a follow-up episode, by the way, everyone. Suzanne is going to meet with my co-host, Kate, who does
Mhm.
the purpose and prosperity line of Vivatude. And she and Suzanne are going to go into a lot of the financial pieces of this. But
Right.
before we even get to the financial abuse, they have to get in there. And
Hmm.
so, who do you think is vulnerable to these kinds of scams? And in your case, right, how were you set up for
Hmm.
this?
Well, the people that are the most vulnerable are those that are in transition, or grief, loss of a spouse, divorce, abuse, any sort of scenario, job transition, health transitions, and they're often found, online, usually on social media. They're found on dating sites because dating sites are big where people, again, are vulnerable and they're putting their place out there. And dating sites don't really do anything about it except for if you report somebody, they still don't necessarily do anything about it because, again, they're all about money. And so, again, now my radar is like I can point him from a mile away. And so here, but at the time, I had no clue who this person was when they got into my instant messages at on or direct messages on Facebook. I had no idea who they were. And I started a conversation with this gentleman, and when I say he, I know now later it was probably a whole group of people that had my profile online and that were dialoguing with me. So when I say he, I want to preface it that it
Yeah.
it could have been 20 people that were talking to Suzanne, as this person's name was Robert Victor. And he gave me his name. He said he was from Romania originally, and he's been in this country since 1993. He told me this very sad story about his wife, and I was in just this emotional support, of separation group, and I was suffering from PTSD from abuse from my husband, verbal abuse, an episode that really ended our marriage. I had been verbally abused by him for 15 years, or emotionally abused. He never struck me, but it was something that, I just, I internalized for a very, very long time until I just had enough. And, when you put up with that for a long time, it's like you're wishing to have connection. And I was pretty much throughout my marriage, I was pretty much emotionally isolated from him. He wasn't engaged in anything that I did. He wasn't interested in anything that I did. When I would try to share with him things, he would say, "I don't care," or he'd walk out of the room or whatever it was. So, the thing is that I was a prime target because I was really devastated and I needed some sort of support and connection. And it's also weird because when you're going through a divorce like that, your friends don't necessarily know how to deal with you either, then at that point. And so my whole kind of circle of friends got weird. And I spent the holidays all by myself. And this gentleman popped into my world on December 26th, the day after Christmas.
All right, so I want to put a pin in that because you said a lot of things there that I think people in our audience can relate to. Number one, you were feeling isolated, you had been
Mhm.
through a challenging time. The
Yeah.
second thing is you were out in the world in a support group kind of situation, which, that's a place where most people expect to feel safe, right?
Yeah.
And so that's, something for people. And we're not saying that all support groups are bad. We're just going through a
Right.
few things to pay attention to. And then also there was this emotional connection. We're going to get into more of the story. I'd
Hmm.
like to
Hmm.
invite you to start from, how did this all start? What were some of the things that he said to you? But before we take a break, just this setup, that the emotional climate
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
you were in put you in a vulnerable position, and that could apply to so many people
Right.
in our audience, right?
And
People go,
and here's the thing, the more and more, Lauren, that when I did my research on the other side, caregivers are hugely affected, family caregivers. So many people are home alone caring for a loved one. They have the responsibility on their shoulders to care for someone, or they're working full time and caring for someone, and they feel like they have the weight of the world on their shoulders. And I remember that feeling when I was caring for my mother. I know what that felt like. I know the resentment that I had towards my family. I needed somebody that would care about me. And, who cares for the caregiver, right? There's this, world that we talk about, but the reality, nobody really does. Everybody, when it's just so interesting, because when that loved one passes away, nobody says, you know, how is the caregiver doing? What is happening? It's just like la di da, you can go back to your life again. And yet, this is a magnitude time for someone that is in a caregiving situation that they're just as vulnerable, and they want to reach out. They need connection. Everybody needs connection. We're human beings. And as a result, that's why I want to speak out.
yes. All right. Well, in a moment, we'll be right back, and we're going to have Susan share. In a moment, we'll be right back, and Suzanne will share her story of how this all started and what some of the cues and clues were as she went through this journey. Stay with us.
And thanks for listening to Vivatude. 4 hosts, 1 each week. We help you revivitude your next chapter, because purpose, passion, and prosperity isn't out there. They're already within you. Brighter, bolder, truer. Vivatude.